Welcome, everyone. Sorry we're running a little bit behind. We had a little tour of the locker room situation as we're looking at alternatives for it.
Looks so good.
Want to welcome everyone to the May 28th, 2024 Warren Township High School Board Meeting. As we start out every board meeting, if we could stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up is an approval of the agenda.
I have a change to the agenda, please. I'm going to make a change to consent agenda item B, and I would like to move item 119 in Exhibit A to, let me get this right here, hang on one second, to action item G. So, to do that, I move out of Exhibit A, year-to-date school year 23-24 personnel changes, item 119 to action item G.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Carlson. Mr. DeMonte?
Yes.
Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
We have
Next up are recognitions. On the advice of Ms. Martinez, we're going to move to the track and field ones to the end of the meeting, I understand?
Second.
Because we're so fun to be with.
Right.
So on the agenda, we actually have some fine arts recognitions. So I've got a couple of staff members here from our theater departments to help us with that.
Come on in.
Come on in. Good evening. This is Claire Vanisnik. You may remember her from this winter when we came in and honored our Shakespeare Slam team. She was on that. And after the meeting, there was another student who was a state officer in their event, and they were honored at that meeting. And Claire says to me, she says, Mr. Miller, how come I haven't been honored for being a state thespian officer? And I said, well, Claire, that's a good point, but it's mid-semester. I think you're going to do a lot more. And she did, and normally I like to memorize my lines before I present, but I can't because she's done so much. So she was a state thespian officer, and it's the first time the state has had thespian officers, and so they started as just a group. But then within that group, they elected roles, and Claire was elected president. Beyond that, for the Illinois High School Musical Theater Awards, she was a student reporter. In both of those roles, she did some Instagram takeovers. She was part of the International Thespian Society Student Leadership Council. At the Illinois High School Theater Fest, she led a leadership workshop. This summer, because she, even though she's graduated, is not done, she will be representing Warren and the Illinois Thespians at the International Thespian Festival next month. And I just found this out moments ago. As part of the International Thespian Society and the Educational Theater Association, she has received a scholarship. And everything on that list, Claire is the first Warren student to have done that.
Let's go.
Congratulations, Claire.
I just have one question. What's an Instagram takeover?
There you go.
Not that I'm old, but I'm old.
I thought you were going to ask what's Instagram.
No,
Well,
You're
on
on Instagram.
Facebook, there's stories.
I'm on Instagram too. I still know what you
Okay.
mean by a takeover. I'm
So it's
dumb,
like
so.
where I go on the Instagram and I post stuff about whatever I'm doing that day. So one of them was what a tech week / dress rehearsal day looks like at a Warren Theater show. So I did one for our fall play, The Secret in the Wings. And then one of them was for what the Illinois High School Theater Festival looks like in comparison to the Nebraska one or any other state. And then one of them was for get to know what it's like to be a state thespian officer and if you want to do one in the future.
Nice, very nice.
I've got to ask before you go, what does a state thespian officer do?
So thespians first are people who are very dedicated to theater, and state thespian officers are ones that want to represent whatever state it is as a whole. So for us this year, we focused on kind of promoting and piloting who we are as thespians. So that was building relationships with other schools around you, or just building relationships with other theater troupes. So for example, we are troop 5306, and we started to get to know troupes from around the state to create a leadership workshop. And then we built a toolkit this year, which is like full of a bunch of different things that you can do in your troop. So if your troop is starting off next year, you know, you're gonna have a brand new thespian troupe, what it's like, how do you format, how do you get it started, what are thespian points, what are theater games, acting warm-ups, stuff that you can do in your troupe to be successful. And we kind of set up a bunch of different systems to.
You have like competing plays or anything, or?
We don't do competitions. I know IHSA does a couple competitions, but thespians are more about the community as a whole and don't compete against each other, and we want to build everyone up to make everyone better and make your school's theater program the best it can be for what you have. Yes.
Thank you.
So Claire, I made a mistake. So usually I have like little W pins. I'm gonna mail it to you because coming over here I forgot to pack my W's. So I will get you a W. We try to get any students that we recognize here a W. I apologize for that.
You're good. Thank you.
All right, I think we've got three track students. I'm gonna have you come up this way though because it's a little tight there. So if I could get you guys up here. Okay. All right, just because it's after the school year has ended, we had some scheduling conflicts with our track coaches. And so I don't know these students as well as their track coaches do. So I'm just gonna let them introduce themselves, brag about yourselves a little bit, tell us why you're here and what your accomplishments were this year, and if you have any future plans.
Okay, so I'm Carolina Martinez. I'm a graduating senior, and I'll be running at Bradley University next year, majoring in sports communications. I've been on varsity all 4 years here at Warren. I've run the 4x1, 4x2, 4x4, the 100 a couple times, not my main one, and then the 200 and the 400. Last year was actually my first year running the 400 ever. My coach Klein, who's a distance coach, he saw my time trial for it, and he kind of just put me in there. And then my summer coach was like, okay, well, you're running it in the summer now, so deal with it. So I started doing that, and then this year was my first like actual high school season running an open 400 event, and I did really well at it. Qualified, we got conference champion, sectional champion, and then placed third at state with a big PR, so I'm really happy.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess that's all I really do.
My name's Aiden Cabrera. I've been a shot put and discus thrower for Warren on varsity these past 4 years.
Nice, very nice.
Aiden, are you also on varsity football and varsity bowling. You're a three-sport athlete? Yes, sir. Thought I recognized you. Outstanding. I paid attention at reward at that night.
And I believe Maddie does
For the
basketball.
graduation.
Basketball too. Wow.
I also forgot to mention that I was awarded Male Athlete of the Year and was first team all.
What'd you say?
Maddie does wheelchair basketball.
Maddie also does basketball, right? Wheelchair baseball.
It's awesome.
Maddie, do you hold state records?
Yeah, I hold state records. I broke my own record from last year.
Go. Nice job.
Okay. Again, so I also apologize to the three of you. I will mail you W pins because I left my W pins
Checks in the mail.
Postage with Carolina.
He really means it.
So, any other questions for our student athletes?
Great job.
Great job.
Job,
Impressive.
guys.
So
Thank you for coming
impressive.
tonight. Let's see. Do we have any other students that we're recognizing? I think that's all we've got tonight. Okay, so families, you're welcome we always say you're welcome to stick around, but you don't have to. We know why you
Where
came.
else would you go? I mean,
I know we've got a handful of individuals here from the transportation department. But anybody else, I know you guys said you're gonna stick around for a little bit, but anybody else, you're welcome to leave or stick around. Thanks
Our
for
feelings will
coming
not be hurt if there's a mass exodus. Thanks, everyone. Next up on the agenda is the time for public comment. We didn't have anybody sign in, but if anybody would like to address the board, you're more than welcome to. Just go on up to the podium, state your name, and you're allotted 3 minutes. Just keep in mind, it's your time to address the board. It's not meant to be a dialogue. Problem. We'll just move forward on to committee reports. Any
Oh, we don't have anything to add, but if people have questions, we can answer questions.
questions or comments on the
Think some-
committee reports?
Some of the committee reports are draft, and so if you see anything that you want, if you're at a committee meeting and you're seeing the draft minutes and have things that you want to make suggestions to, we can do that between now and the next committee meeting where those would be approved.
Good to move forward. Next up are superintendent's reports.
I don't think I have anything to add, but I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions?
So the triple, are we supposed to tell you if we're signing up for the Triple I conference? Has everybody signed up? Anybody signed up?
Is there a sign-up list? How should we communicate the yay or nay of that?
I think if you could just, if you could email Jean, there's also in the agenda, there's a link in the executive section where you can fill out just some details and requests for the trip.
Jean, when would you like that information by?
If you could let me know by the end of this week.
Okay.
Registration opens Monday, the 3rd, and if we wish to have our first choice, we want to get that in on the 3rd.
And just repeat again where the spreadsheet is that we're gonna fill out.
There's a link in the agenda if
Oh,
you're
okay.
logged into the agenda.
Yep.
Or you can just email
Or
us
just
and
email
we'll
me.
get it to you.
Anything else? Next up is the consent agenda.
Amended. Want me to?
You don't have to redo it, just,
Yeah, you do have to redo part of it.
Exit and then
Yes, if you could.
see if I,
Oh, I see it, I can do it. Okay, I move to approve the consent agenda item as presented, which includes personnel recommendations, Exhibit A, 114 through 118, and 120 through 124 as posted. And Exhibit B, athletic activities and volunteer personnel recommendations, numbers B 263 through B 269 as posted. Payment of bills dated May 28th, 2024 in the amount of $4,791,520.53. Regular meeting minutes from May 14th, 2024. The 2023-2024 final school calendar. Annual approval of property and casualty, student accident, foreign liability, cyber liability, and workers' compensation insurance with collective liability insurance cooperative known as CLIC for the 2024-2025 school year. Approval of contract with McQueen Technology Group for network IT support, annual approval of diesel fuel bid, and award Avalon Petroleum Company for the 2024-2025 school year. Speech services provider agreement with Pediatric Interactions for the 2024-2025 school year, and the physical therapy services provider agreement with Renee C. Johnson, MPT, for the 2024 extended school year and the 2024-2025 school year.
Second. Roll call.
Motion by Anderson, second by Schultz. Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Next up are the discussion items. First one up is the first reading of the district board policies and exhibits.
We don't have anything specifically to add. We did have a committee meeting. I think we had a few board members there for that. There was some discussion around employee handbooks that we're looking into. Otherwise, most of the recommendations from press were pretty mild.
Questions? Let's go on to the conversation about the locker room.
All right, let's see. I'll just kind of update us and set context for where we're at in the conversation, and then let you guys talk. So as a reminder, our architect put the following together as proposals just for pricing purposes mostly. So here is an set of athletic locker rooms, and here's a set of PE locker rooms. That was about $16 million cost. We could consider adding a new fitness center to the side of it, which adds another $3 million. Currently, the fitness center, I think we saw that during the walk, is in this area in the gymnasium. And then the school board had questions about how does this fit into the bigger picture, because there has been, appropriately I think so, this is a good question, there have been conversations around where would we put a swimming pool if we had a swimming pool, or if we had to move the swimming pool or rebuild a swimming pool, and what would it look like if we did a remodel of the auditorium, because that has been a conversation in the past. So these gray areas are those new structures. I think the big changes here that you see from this, you'll notice right now, this is, right here is the entrance to the athletic area, which is a very commonly used entrance area. We have a separate entrance area for the auditorium, and the foyer area is pretty small in there. And these aren't connected. So for student activities or just general community activities, there are multiple doors that we're having to man. Long term, if we were to do something with the swimming pool or the theater area, we would probably pull that into just one common entrance area. There were plans to do that. Like, we looked at plans to do that here in this situation and just toyed with the idea of, if we're building just in this base model, an athletic locker room and a PE locker room, what would the cost be to just wrap around here so that there was a common entrance. But it is a pretty significant cost just to hallway those out basically. And it could make it a little bit more complicated in the future if there were additional theater renovations in the future. So probably right now it's most cost efficient if we are to do the locker room and athletic lockers to not try to bring this into just one single entrance on that side of the building. But if we did do auditorium renovations, we'd be flipping the auditorium and have just a common entrance for that area. In this also, we do have an updated stadium access over here that we could consider in the future. If we go back to the base option, there is some work that would be done here. Right now, this is outside and the stairway is less than awesome. But we'd have to work around that and fix that up if we did the locker rooms. In the future, if we did additional work, we'd probably want to just go ahead and consider fixing this, making that a little bit nicer, putting a wheelchair area, because at this point where most of the tennis courts are being used by the pool, the fitness area, and the locker rooms. So I think that's what you had asked me to bring back, is how would this fit into a bigger plan? So I'll throw the conversation back to you.
On an annual basis, what part of the parking lot is vacant that isn't being used by passes for parking for the kids? Because I see us encroaching, in phases maybe. Is it, I know it's freshmen and sophomores, so they're not all 16 and driving, but
The majority of it's empty.
is it during the day? Okay.
The north end is full because most of the teachers park on the north end. But
Yeah,
on the south end, most of
yeah,
it's empty.
well, let's confirm here with the staff at O'Plain, but generally the parking lot is very empty on school days. It would be when there's football games, for example, or cross-country meet, that parking lot is used pretty significantly.
Most of it
It's pretty
isn't gonna
full.
be done for,
Or awards night? Yeah. It's
So-
not during the day, it's after school that it gets crowded.
so then the reason they didn't stack the two sets of locker rooms out onto the tennis court is,
I think probably that's because I told them we didn't have enough money to do a pool right now, and so if we're doing the locker room, oh, you mean put them
Sideways?
side by side?
no, just like the ones that's down, the lower two new locker rooms that are down into the parking lot. I mean, those two,
Opposed to putting it up here?
yes. I
don't know.
I mean, because my vision was that they're all gonna be on that slab where the tennis courts were, which then you wouldn't encroach into the parking lot.
Yeah.
But if that changes your ability to do something else in the future, I don't know. I mean, that's,
It looks to me like it has to do with access, proximity to the gym.
yeah, so you don't have to go through the other locker room which you wouldn't have to anyway. 'cause
You'd have to
there'd be
walk
that
down the
little
hallway to get to it.
There's a hallway between them now, right? Because
Yes.
there'd have to be to get to that
Yes.
gym area if we decide to build that. Yeah.
My understanding, but Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is where we're at right now is conceptual. And before we went out to bid, if the board is interested in pursuing the project and says, yes, let's keep going, one of the steps would be to sit down with the stakeholders like the PE teachers and the coaches and make sure that the district office perspective of where things should go and how they should be used matches the coaches and the teachers. So maybe that's a fair question. I don't know offhand
Yep.
right now.
I mean, that could be addressed. down
And
the
I
road.
understand, this was presented based on a lot of the conversations about flooding in the current area of locker room. I understand all that, and there's a lot of discussion of what would we use that space for if we built out. I think I would be interested in just hearing, like, what would it cost, and if it's cost prohibitive, so be it.
Or even possible.
Or even possible, thank you, absolutely, or even practical at that point, or what the thoughts are about rebuilding over the current situation. But, I mean, just walking through there and almost hitting my head on every pipe in the ceiling, I can't imagine what the quagmire is in there at this point. But I'm just curious to hear what thoughts are.
Yeah, I'll write that down. I can
It would
follow
help
up
us
on that.
just go forward with confidence if we went the other way. So,
I think we definitely need to get a rough estimate on that. One, for the cost, and two, like you said, John, if it's even feasible to get, eliminate the problems that we have right now.
If I can work on that.
Okay, so I know whether or not we would build a new pool is the big decision. But that white rectangle at the top of this map feels like,
Field house?
Pool's down below it in that
oh, the
gray
pool is
area.
below it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, so the field house is,
intact.
we're not talking about that, okay. The pool area, I feel like we need to include that in this level of planning, because if we were to build a new pool, obviously that pool would be decommissioned, and then it would be empty space.
Be another PE space,
Like,
like the cardio room.
would it be a cardio room, and then we don't need to build a cardio, you know? I
Which
don't know the
again-
order of being able to make these decisions if we can do that, but.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I, at this point, think that the strongest consideration would be to just go with the base model. So that we did want to have conversations, and I think you had asked me this upcoming year to take some time and meet with
Yes, yeah.
the aquatics families, as I'll call them. And when Chris and I spoke, the cost to build a fitness center next to the athletic locker rooms probably isn't significantly more if we do it later than it is if we do it right now. There's gonna be some added cost.
It may cost you $3 million to turn the pool into a fitness center if you had to shut it down, which we're not shutting it down yet. But if we did, that would be a pretty good chunk of change as well. So anyway, just thoughts, but I think the base model is certainly the safest way to go as far as keeping your fluid options open. But as I've said, I don't know, at least 35 times, I'll say it again, I'm in favor of doing the locker rooms. I think it's something that needs to be done. It's a pit, it's nasty, it floods, and it's really the last thing in this school that was probably built when the school was originally built in 22 or whenever it was. So, anyway, those are my thoughts.
Then where does that leave us with the current situation with the gym housing the cardio equipment?
It stays there
Stays
until
there.
we make
I
the
just wanted
decision
to
on
be
the,
clear.
yeah, until we make the decision on the pool.
Okay.
Other thoughts? I'm gonna agree what you were saying, John and Beth. I think we need to do something to move forward with the locker rooms. I mean, we've been talking about needing to do something in the locker rooms since I came on the board. It was just, we couldn't afford to. And they are gross and nasty, and I'm not a health expert, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some health concerns down there with the flooding from the water, the sewage, the other things. We have to do something.
We have some great student athletes.
So I feel like my marching orders then are to continue to investigate the locker room details, but go ahead and proceed with putting enough details together that we can come to you with a proposal for a bid. That would include having the architects meet with the end users to make sure that our understanding of scope and needs is correct. It would include making sure that we have an answer to how much it would cost to redo the locker room where it's currently at, so you could weigh those options when you see final proposals. And at minimum, we should be discussing with our end users if this is the right configuration physically, and if it makes more sense to put the PE lockers and the athletic lockers side by side, only using tennis court area.
I mean, the other thought too is if you're not using the locker space, the original locker space, is even moving the cardio that way somehow possibly. So I don't know, like maybe there's some ideas someone else could come up with, some options to look at.
Okay, then we'll move forward with that plan.
Sounds good. Next up is, under discussion items, is the career pathways position.
Yeah, so what I would like to do is move forward with, I think a good middle ground would be to just move forward with doing a short-term contract with a third-party consultant that can do some work with us around building our expectations around a career pathway program. That individual could help us better understand the partnerships that are out there. Chris and I can do work for that. I think there's only so much that we can do with the bandwidth that we have, and doing a private consultant would be less of a long-term commitment. It seems like there's still some interest in making sure we flesh out the details on that, and this will let us keep taking some steps forward. So I don't have a contract to propose tonight, but I'm planning on working on that in the coming weeks if that is okay. Otherwise, we should keep talking about it so I know what I should be doing next.
I thank the board for its wisdom and consideration and look forward to, this is a good start and it's a good compromise.
Okay.
You should move forward with that.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you very much. Next up are the action items. First action item is approval of the class sizes. Any questions or commentary on this? Not, I move to approve the course offering recommendations as presented.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Schultz, second by Pope. Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is an approval of the new Appendix B positions. Any questions, comments, discussion? If not, I move to approve the addition of 2 marching band color guard sponsors to the Appendix B Level 5 position list.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Schultz, second by Anderson. Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Next up is the approval of the 24-25 textbook purchases. Any discussion? Gio, is there anything you want to say? You want to hear us ask one more time, how come we don't go all digital? Oh yeah, because we have to annotate everything?
It's actually, it makes the digital and print. So
Okay,
most
just-
of it is digital licenses, yes.
Just checking.
He has to ask that question every year.
I have to.
I mean,
I
it's
have
just,
to.
yeah, yeah. I look forward to the year and say, no.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I move to approve the 2024-2025 textbook purchase list as presented.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Schultz, second by Martinez. Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Next up is letter D, approval of paperback book bids for the 24-25 school year. Any questions or comments on what's been presented to us? If not, I move to approve the paperback books bid and award the contracts to the recommended vendors in the amount of $72,506.52 for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Schultz, second by Martinez. Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Next up is an approval for the food service pricing. Any questions or comments beyond what's been presented? If not, I move to approve the food service pricing as proposed for the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Schultz, second by Anderson. Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Next up is a continuation from last meeting. We're looking for an approval of the bus video surveillance system.
Talk about that?
Yep.
So as we talked about last meeting, provided us several options for the board, and then based off our conversation, we can pursuing things with 24/7 security. So the proposal that we have in front of you tonight is to replace a lot of the DVRs that are on the board, that are on all the buses. We're upgrading, we get some trade-in pricing that allows us to upgrade to new DVRs across all of our buses, add additional cameras to bring us in line with what's considered to be best practices on best practice for bus video surveillance. And then in terms of system functionality, we would now have the ability to retrieve remotely from the DVR. So if there's an incident on the bus, the buildings can recall video. And then if there's ever an incident on the bus, one of the features on the quote is for live look-in, which allows us to immediately pull video, like have live stream video on demand. So it's not constantly streaming, but if a bus is out and something happens, we have the ability to have live look-in in real time. So it's a per minute package. So we're going to start with the lease of the 1,000 minutes and see how that goes. And that's something that we might have to re-up from time to time. But as we talked through it with the vendor, they felt that was based on the number of buses that we have. They felt that was appropriate for us to begin with. And then we would be starting installation relatively quickly on our large buses, but we are switching out some of our smaller buses over the summer. So we're working with the bus with 24/7 to plan out the installation schedule over the summer.
So if it's approved tonight, it would all be done over the summer?
Yeah, it depends. The large buses, yes. The small buses, Gene and Rich are working with us and Brooke from 24/7 to try and put together that installation schedule, but it would be our hope to get that done as quickly as possible.
If the board chooses to approve this tonight, I do think that discussion point, if community members ask about priorities, the school board has consistently talked about safety and allocated fiscally a lot of priority to safety in the last couple of years. So this would fall under that category.
Absolutely. Anything else? I move to approve the bus video surveillance system upgrade with 24/7 security as presented.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Schultz and second by Carlson. Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinez? Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
10G, so I'll make that motion. It says, I move to approve a personnel recommendation from Exhibit A, number 119, termination.
Conversation or discussion? I second that. Roll call?
Motion by Anderson, second by Schultz. Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
One. If there's nothing else, we'll make the last last motion. I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call.
Motion by Schultz and second by Anderson. Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Demonte?
Yes.
Mrs. Squires?
Yes.
Mrs. Pope?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
7 yes, motion carries.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy.